Welcome back to another episode of Parenting Shrink Wrapped. Sam here with Melissa, and our special guest today is Dr. Tina Schermer Sellers. And one of the reasons we invited Dr. Schermer Sellers on today is because of her expertise as a sexuality educator. You may not know, I can't remember if I've divulged this in a previous episode, but in my life as a teacher, I fell into becoming a sex educator when the job I took happened to have that as one of the, sub parts. And what I realized is everyone runs for the hills when people say that, that's what I'm doing. I'm teaching sex ed. Oh, really? I feel sorry for you. But I loved it. I got training in it and I fell in love with it. And what I recognize is when you have the right attitude towards it, it is merely another topic that's that we need to teach our kids about. There are values and decision-making skills that go along with a healthy sexual mindset and healthy sexual attitude and decision-making skills. And we have not addressed it on Parenting Shrink Wrapped. So here goes. Buckle up. This is the conversation that we have not had yet. And Dr. Tina Schermer Sellers is here to do this. So let me tell you a little bit about Tina, and then she'll fill in some of my gaps. She is a Swedish-American therapist, educator, and author. And her book, that the title of the book that really caught my eye is Shameless Parenting. How about that, right? Like, how often do we, why do people run for the hills when they say we're a sex educator? Is because there's shame and there's stigma attached to this topic for most of us. She hails from the Pacific Northwest, where she's zooming in with us today. And in addition to being a sex educator, she teaches clinicians and physicians and parents how to show up for your kids or clients or patients around this issue to promote healthy sexual development. She's the founder and chief advisor to the Northwest Institute on Intimacy, offering postgraduate clinical training in sex therapy and relational health, the founder and executive director of Inanna Rising, a clinical membership collective dedicated to equitable, just, and patient-centered psychedelic-assisted therapy training and support for activists and clinicians. She is a wealth of knowledge that I've just hit the tip of the iceberg. Welcome, Dr. Tina Schermer Sellers, to Parenting Shrink Wrapped.
Thank you so much, Sam. I'm so glad to be with both of you. And it's so fun to hear that little bit of your story, Sam, because I would say something sort of similar. I fell into being a sex educator when I was teaching at a private school. This is my second job, maybe out of college, teaching at a private school. And I was hired to teach math, science, and Latin.
This sounds familiar.
And in the science curriculum was sex ed. And I was actually super excited about it. I'm one of those people that adores adolescents. I think that they have this maybe last glimmer of truth that they're willing to put out there into the world. And if we're willing to listen, they often have the ideas. They might come in a spicy kind of way, but it is worth listening to. So I just adored it. And so when I got into teaching it, I had a secret question box. You could put your anonymous question in. Yeah, see? And how much more fun
is just that? Doing this on opposite coasts. You didn't realize
exactly. And, and they taught me so much. If I didn't know something, I'm like, great, you hit a question. I'm not sure. I'm going to go do some research and come back. And it was a blast. It was just a blast. But it was from there that I decided to going back to school, grad school, to be a family therapist, because I was also learning from my students that what was going on at home. Mm-hmm. So these were relatively privileged kids. What was going on at home was interrupting their ability to learn. Many of them were dealing with very stressful situations. And I thought we need to be holding families differently than we are. And so that took me back to school, and then that kind of changed all kinds of things, and I ended up, again, falling into teaching graduate level human sexuality because no one else on the faculty wanted to do it, And I'm like, God, to me, it's a blast. So absolutely sign me up for it. And I started teaching that class. And of course, I had many other classes, but I started teaching that one yearly in 1992.
Mm.
Around the year 2000, one of the assignments I had them do, and this I know is going to be hard for anybody to hear, but I had them write their sexual autobiography. And people are like, oh my God, I can't imagine ever committing that to paper. But if you're studying to be a therapist, you're only as ever a good a therapist as you know what your stories are, where
Yep.
you begin and end and your patients begin and end, right? And sexuality just was not a story or a narrative that people really understood because they could remember events. Like I remember my first kiss, or I remember getting caught playing with my neighbor, but it was not a narrative. And so I gave them like 60, 70 questions. And I said, this is not so you answer every question, but I want you to see the arc of these questions. I want you at the end of this to be able to look back and see what your legacy has been and whether or not you want to carry that legacy forward for yourself. So I started reading these in 92. Around the year 2000, there was a dramatic tone change, not story change necessarily, but tone change in these autobiographies. So much more self-hatred, ignorance about what was normal sexual development or curiosity through the lifespan, just a lot of self-criticism and self-hatred. And I didn't know what I was seeing. And it would bring me to tears to read some of these papers. And it took me about 3 years to realize I was hitting the first wave of students to be impacted by abstinence only education, which was rolled out in the 80s, but really hit a real peak in the early 90s because the religious right and moral majority were funding this. This was all religious education. We know that now. We know abstinence only education was religious education. We also know that 80% of it was medically inaccurate. But even to this day, we only have 18 states that have passed policies that require that whatever sex education they offer must be medically accurate. Today, 18,
Right.
and it's only increased by 1 or 2 in the last decade. So I really realized, wow, we've been taking steps backwards with regard to sexual health, and awareness about child development and awareness about, other forms of development. And just even, I mean, remembering how much child development books were like in the mainstream when I was growing up in the 60s and early 70s, and then not now. I mean, not for a long time, right? And so just, began to really get into that. And that took me down the path of doing research on abstinence only education and religious and authoritarian homes and what that was producing with regard to shame inside people, and then what the impact of that shame really was. So we didn't have research until 2017 on what is sexual shame and its impact.
8 years ago.
8 years ago. And I'm happy to read that definition to you guys because it is phenomenal when you realize how we're hurting people. Like we literally are hurting their ability to do attachment in their life, to give and receive love.
Hold on, just so slow. So in 2017, we had that was when research was put forth around what is sexual shame. So like that, so that term, like
it was going for the operational definition of sexual shame. There was nothing in the books. We had stuff on shame, right? Brene Brown has made that a household name, thank goodness. But nothing on sexual shame. So literally the researcher,
because if
people
you've got
run
sexual
away
shame
from this topic.
Yeah, they're gonna run. So tell us the working definition of sexual shame and I'm sure you can't just like tell the impact in 30 seconds, but
well, the definition does a really good job. So we can unpack it to the degree that we want to, but it's stunning. I remember I was on my way back from a speaking gig and I'm reading this dissertation and my mouth is hanging open because I'm finally seeing in black and white what I'd been seeing in my practice for years, right? And from my students. So sexual shame is a visceral feeling. So it's in your body. It's somatic, a visceral feeling of humiliation and disgust toward one's own body and identity as a sexual being. and a belief of being abnormal, inferior, and unworthy. This feeling can be internalized, but it also manifests in interpersonal relationships. So, when does a child find their genitals? About 11 months, right? That's when their hand is grabbing things finally,
Yeah.
right? It lands on their genitals. And I always say it's a great day. It's a great day. Diapers change, are in the tub. It is a great day. But most parents don't know what to do with that. And they usually have a shame based reaction,
Like, no,
not
no, no.
meaning to.
Like, don't touch there.
No, no,
Don't-
hands
don't.
off of that.
No, dirty, yuck, don't, right? And the kids has no clue what's just happened there. And they're not going to start monitoring their behavior until they're about 4. So they're going to do this hundreds and hundreds of times. This is pre-verbal.
Yep.
Right? So interpersonal relationships having a negative impact on trust, communication, and physical and emotional intimacy. Okay.
Well, if the person thinks they're broken and there's something wrong with them, how on earth can they like show up honestly and vulnerably and authentically?
Absolutely. So we put masks on, right? Sexual shame develops across the lifespan, like we just said, in interactions with interpersonal relationships, but then one's culture and society. So think about this for a minute. We drive our economy through exploitation. And our exploitation takes the look of, I'm going to make you feel bad about that thing, your nose, your hair, your height, your this, your money, your blah, 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 in order for you to buy more things.
Yes. As long as you feel bad, then I'm in business. Yes.
Right. Exactly. Right. So that's how, so we have to understand we've done this now since from pre-verbal, then culture begins to layer its shame, not good enough, not worthy on top of it. Right. And then a subsequent critical self-appraisal begins to start. So the inner critic gets going. And by adolescence, that is our torturer.
Right. Yes.
Absolutely. Yep. So it's a feedback loop, and there's been no break in it at any point along the way, often because this is a silenced issue. I say, just from talking all over the United States and some teams internationally, that not about 95% of people who grow up in the United States grow up in either silence or silence and shame around sexuality. It is that common for the generational epigenetics to be silence or shame. And then the last piece says, there is also a fear and uncertainty related to one's power or right to make decisions, including safety decisions related to sexual encounters, along with an internalized judgment toward one's own sexual desire. So that came from the work of Dr. Noel Clarke, like I said, in 2017. And that last piece, I don't know if either of you have ever read any of Peggy Orenstein's books. She wrote Girls and Sex and Boys and Sex. So in Peggy's book on girls and sex, she interviewed about 80 girls. She found that so many, if not the majority of these young women, were very confident and competent in multiple areas of their life until they got ready to go out. And then they were putting down 3, 4, and 5 shots of hard liquor. Why? Because they didn't know if they could keep themselves safe or if they had the right to. These were not kids who came from religious backgrounds or necessarily from authoritarian homes. It is that pervasive, and the impact of driving our economy on exploitation has really developed the rape culture that we have now, and why girls feel so unsafe. So that kind of lays it out for you.
So you talked about girls right there. Does sexual shame affect all genders equally?
Differently. I don't know equal. I would, if I really probably gave some time to think of it, I would say yes, equally, but really, really differently in how it manifests. So with boys, it's often manifesting as people are like, they really buy the exploitation. People are there for my pleasure and I'm entitled to what I want. There's a lot of entitlement. Lots of boys are not raised to be held accountable for what they do. It's like, oh, boys are being boys. And we see this at the national level, right? We see this everywhere, whatever. And so I'm not as prone to notice or to learn about boundaries or how are you different from me or believing you. I think a no is a yes. I've been told silly things like that. And so the way in which it manifests is still deeply shame ridden, and it manifests again in ways in which that keeps people apart from each other. I can't feel
And from
safe.
themselves.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, I mean, patriarchy has not been our friend.
Hmm.
I always feels like such a, I mean, really? Yeah, really. Like it has really hurt us in so many ways. But the thing that makes me grieve the most is that it impacts people in their deepest, um, most important interpersonal relationships,
Yeah.
because they've got a mask on and the other person has a mask on. So when you extend your love to them, they think, yeah, you wouldn't really love me if you knew me. So they don't receive it. Right. And when they're giving it, they're doubting, well, am I giving this because of this or this, And so it impacts emotional bonding and safety. And we know from the Harvard 85-year study, the happiness
Yes.
study, right?
Yes.
That what matters. And I worked in oncology
Relationship.
for a decade, right?
Connection.
Relationships and the honesty and integrity of those relationships.
Well, the one thing that was actually coming to my mind when you were discussing like relationships is we have such like also high divorce rates and stuff, and that pulling probably, if this data gets pulled all together, there's probably at least a correlation, because the relationship is already kind of on shaky grounds. If you can't receive the love,
Right.
like it's impacting so many areas then.
Right. Right. And there's not been, again, and this may shift us, but if we start talking about what is comprehensive sex education, it is relationship education. It is interpersonal, understanding boundaries and what kindness is. I mean, it's really the foundation from a toddler through age 8 is really building all of those skills, those interpersonal wisdom skills of relationship. And then you build the other stuff on top of that, from 8 on, really. And most people don't even know what comprehensive sex education is and why it is so important to people being successful, relationally successful later in life. Emotional intelligence has a lot to do with how you'll do in your career, I mean, so yeah.
So it's all so as gosh, I have like so many questions and we've got so this could be a 2-hour podcast. If
Sure.
left like I could go on and on, but here's one of them. So we've got like shame is invading the sexual development of humans who then become parents to other humans.
Yes.
And so there's the how do I get rid of or treat or address the shame that I may have inherited inadvertently from my own growing up experience? And how do I not transmit that to the next generation? Like what? So there's like prevention, and then there's also proactive. Like how do I not transmit it? And so then what do I do instead? So there's 2 hours. You got it. Like,
well, and so that question is what I got after my first book. So I wrote a book on how did America get so sex negative, and I really looked at the influences, and that's Sex, God, and the Conservative Church: Erasing Shame from Sexual Intimacy. What I heard from people after reading that book was, "Thank you. That was incredibly liberating. It makes sense to me. It's not me.
yeah.
I don't want to do to my kids or nieces and nephews what was done to me. Can you help me?" And I said, I got you. And that's shameless parenting, everything you need to raise shame-free, confident kids and heal your shame too. And I said to them, I will do this in such a way that you will feel like I'm holding your hand. So I broke it down, chapter 0 to 2, 2 to 4, 4 to 6, 6 to 8, up to 18, saying you're not getting the child development information you need. And even if you were taking development classes, they're staying away from sexual development still.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
I didn't get a lot of it in thinking back to my training, even in psychiatry.
Right? I know. That's why we have the Institute, because it was like, we need to help. We need to support you better. We really do. We need to
And I
support you
think
better.
also that's why parents sort of feel adrift when it comes to this, because
Yes.
like what you said, pre-age 8, we need to be focusing on relationship skills. Like, how do I interplay with other people? And consent,
Yes.
that starts earlier. Like, yes, you may braid my hair, or no, you may
Right.
not touch my hair today, right? Like
Right.
those, not sexual
Absolutely.
at all, just
Appreciating difference is another
yes.
thing we really want to encourage, show kids, demonstrate to kids, and that kind of thing. So in the book, what I found after the book came out is people were saying, I'm not having children, or I don't have children, but I've been using this book to walk me through my development, because I didn't get what I needed, and I don't even know what I needed. And so they literally, because every chapter is like, here's what kids behaviorally are trying to do, emotionally, kind of the tasks, generally speaking, they're trying to do. Here's the sexual or body curiosities that are likely to emerge and how they'll express them. How do you imagine that's going to feel for you? If you can feel any part of you that goes like that just put your hand on your heart and say, somebody who loved me very much just didn't know how to give me what I needed. And then you do that. You go, because at the end of every chapter are the leading books and websites for that age, for kiddos and for parents. And I'm like, just go get them and read them to your inner 2-year-old, 4-year-old, 6-year-old, whatever, because there is a part of you that still remembers, even at a visceral level, remembers what you didn't get and will respond to what you needed. Like, you will feel that part of you go, oh God, that would have felt so good. And that makes so much sense, And so people are using that book to heal their own shame.
Mm-hmm.
And then also know how to then have different conversations with kiddos where they don't do this. And they're like, oh, I have a really good book for that. Or we could read this together. And it feels fun. Like you were talking about, Sam, it starts to feel fun when our shame goes away, because we want kids to have good, thriving, safe relationships where they get to grow and change. The other person gets to grow and change. And then instead of splitting up, right, because they don't know how to do that, they keep pushing each other to grow and change.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what a long-term relationship is. But you've got to have yourself intact.
Yeah. So one of the messages then is not necessarily before, but as you are guiding your children through their own sexual development,
Yes.
make sure you're guiding yourself.
Right. And I would say to parents, you don't have to have the whole thing figured out.
Mm-hmm.
Just be 2 years ahead of your oldest. That's it. And then you can, go on back. So
spoken like a teacher, Tina. Right? You don't have to know the whole year's curriculum. Just be 1 week ahead of the rest of the class, right? Or even one day is enough.
Exactly.
Right?
That's exactly right. And people are really responding super well to that and they're feeling very loved in it all.
So, Tina, are there other countries that do this
Yes.
a lot better than us? And what are they doing differently societally that we're clearly not doing in the United States?
So the Northern European countries have been doing this since the mid-40s. So that's Sweden, Norway, Denmark, Finland, Holland, Iceland. Okay. They all have comprehensive, they call it life education, not sex education. I mean, it's really interpersonal relationship education.
I kind of like the difference in name just from the get-go. Like,
right. Yeah. And I have a book that my husband found for me from 1965, published about Sweden's comprehensive sex ed. And it's got pictures, like black and white pictures of boys and girls learning to bathe babies together in front of the classroom. Like life, it's life.
Yeah.
Like, how do we build a rich interpersonal life? And all of their statistics are better than the United States. If you want to read a really interesting book, read the book Not Under My Roof by Amy Shallett. It's a qualitative research study. She grew up in Holland, came to the US, noticed how teenage kids didn't talk to their parents at all about this stuff. And she'd grown up where kids all talk to their parents before they have sex the first time. They talk about readiness, everything. And they're at home when they have sex. They're at one of their homes when they have sex for the first time. People cannot imagine that. And this book is so good because it shows the narratives happening in 2 cities in the US and 2 cities in Holland. right? It's so different because if you want your child to remain connected to you through adolescence, become a good sex and relationship teacher, a safe person who can hear, and what your kids, my kids would do whatever they would do. And I'd be like, yeah, that's perfect for your age. Like, you're fulfilling your job description. But that doesn't mean I'm going to go along with that. My job here is to, hold the boundaries, do the thing, whatever. But your job is to be 15 or 13 or 12 or whatever. My job is partially to know what that is, so that when you do it, I don't take it personally, you know?
That's one of the, as a parenting coach, that's some of the things that I will say. Like,
it sounds a lot like you, Sam.
I know. Like when parents will be like, my kid's doing X, Y, Z. I'm like, well, that is completely normal for the age.
On track.
Yes.
Perfectly fulfilling their job description. Yeah. You got to deal with it. And you know what? You were doing that too, likely.
Right. We just don't remember.
It's Mike. So what were you like? It's really, this is part of the conversation I'm sure you're having, well, what were you like at 12? Or were you too afraid to act on your own behalf because of what was going to happen? Then it wasn't safe. And you were shamed for being normal.
Plenty of us were and I would lump myself into that category. Plenty of us were.
Absolutely.
You mentioned at the start that you're like, teenagers are great. They're like the last bastion of truth. And I think that this is like, it's, not that this isn't a topic that people shy away from with younger kids. It is, but I think it really gets dicey with teenagers, at least in the American culture. Do you have any, and I recognize that I'm asking for a Cliff Notes version of the Encyclopedia Britannica here. So I know I'm putting you on the spot, but do you have any suggestions if parents of teens are listening, what are ways they can, even if they haven't yet done the work, but they're going to, they're like, okay, I'm invested in this, but their kid comes home tomorrow and is like, what's sexual assault? Or, how do you know if you gave consent? I don't know if I did, these are the types of questions that teens ask, or, right? Like, what are some things people can bear in mind, do, say, not do, not say, to begin to do this right?
So my Cliff Notes version is 1, pay attention to your face. Make sure your face has some amount of love and safety, maybe a little bit of happiness in it.
Not shock. Not shock.
So take a deep breath as you relax your face. First thing you say is, wow, what a great question. Thank you for bringing that to me. Okay. So you want to honor that they came to you. That's what you want. You want them to come to you. You want to be a resource, even if you don't know the answer. Okay. Yep. But you want that. So you say that first off. The second thing you say is, if you don't know, this is not a practiced one. You say, I think I have to think a little bit about how I want to talk about that with you. Do you mind if we wait and I can do a little bit of thinking and we can talk about it maybe tomorrow? Would that be okay with you? These are important questions you're bringing, and I really want you to feel supported when I answer you.
Which is like, you deserve my time of day. You deserve my full attention. I want to give it to you. That's so dignifying.
Absolutely.
And it buys parent time.
Very validating.
You can run to the Shameless book. You can read, and you can go look for specifics. You could probably ask chat, how do I talk about this in a way that, is like, would encourage my child, give them adequate information, whatever. You just take the time to get this stuff. And I'm like, DM me if it's something you don't know what to do. I'm totally fine with that. It's a step, but you want to first off just receive it with gratefulness and affirmation. Okay. And then go forward. And sometimes it's going to be, baby, you're dealing with some of stuff I never dealt with. And I really want to learn how to be supportive of you with this. And I feel like it's a really important thing for you to feel clear about. So So we're going to just do this together. Are you okay with the fact I might be a little bumpy on this? Own
So,
it. It's
putting it out on the
okay.
table, putting it out.
Yeah.
You don't have to say, I have it all figured out. I know. You're like, okay, I'm going to
No.
grow
What
with you.
parent has it all figured out? We
No.
wouldn't have
Right.
a podcast.
And
Sam, if
yet
that
how
was the
many
case.
feel like they should? Again, this is a
Everyone.
result of
Everyone.
capitalism. Right. They feel like they should, but the reality is none of us ever do.
Yeah.
And our oldest, I always say, our oldest take us to places we've never been.
They're the experimental child.
You know?
Figuring it out. It's one big
and so we're seeing
laboratory.
this all the time, like, wow, I didn't know this came at 4. You know, like I remember when my son, who was my oldest, he had a sassy mouth right in the summer and when he was 4. And I remember going, I thought this came in 10 more years. And I taught adolescents, right?
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, I need to learn about this, you know? And so it's all a learning and it's okay to not know. But again, the biggest message you want to give is you're important. This is important. And I want to give you adequate time so that we can do this well. You know?
First of all, thank you for that script. I usually like to say like parenting is improv and I don't give the script to the play. Like we don't, but that's a script and that will work in most scenes right there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think, you know, having worked, and you guys might have seen this too, having worked with people with trauma, a lot of times people have the scripts of what they don't want to do.
Yeah.
But they don't have they know what they want, but they don't have the scripts.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so you can just throw some out and like, how does that feel to you? How does that feel in your body when you hear me say that? Let's put something together because they can feel so lost in there because what they have is shame-based garbage.
Yes. Yep.
And it's multi-generational often.
And it's going to be hard to change that. So people need to give themselves some grace because you're going to fumble on this.
Absolutely.
For sure, because we don't have modeled behavior from our prior generations.
Absolutely. And that's where I think some of these books, these kiddo books and parent books are just so great. Because again, you don't have to have it all. You just read the book, you know, together and you ask, well, what do you think of that? What did you think of that? And it gives you stuff along the way. Like you're learning here too.
Yeah.
Right.
Ooh,
and
I wouldn't have thought about that, or that's like a nuance I didn't know. Or I have a female body. I didn't know male bodies work that way. Right.
Exactly. Exactly. I have somebody that helps around our house a little bit, and she has 2 kiddos and they're like 10 and 3 or something. And I happened to ask her, so how's your 10-year-old, it's a girl, how's your 10-year-old doing at, 4th grade, and I said, is she think her period's going to come soon, or do you think it'll be later? And so we're talking, she goes, oh, I think it's going to come soon. And she's so excited. And I just don't know what to do about it. And I go, come into my office. I will send you with some books, because I just want her to feel supported because her daughter's wanting more than she knows how to give, So
my sister, I think, I was my sister. I will botch the story. She'll listen to this and like she'll be like, that's not exactly how it's meant to be. But there's a story somewhere in her life, and it might have been her, or she might have done this for a friend. But she made a red velvet cake when her friend or someone made it for her got their period. And it was like a period celebration cake.
Yeah,
like, it was,
I love it.
Yeah, that was just because
they will hear those stories, and if you didn't get that, you're like, oh, you can celebrate that? Why would I celebrate that? Oh, I'm a goddess. I didn't know that. You know what I mean? Right. Like you get some new ideas that are super helpful for girls.
Yes. It makes me think about all the shame around girls, like, trying to hide, like, that they have a pad on them, like that they might need to use, or like a tampon. Like, I'm just even thinking about like, the awkwardness of like, a dad or a male has to go buy like feminine products at the store, and like there's like
that doesn't stop with just teenagers. This is a true story from the Straub household. So my husband and I had been texting. He was going to the grocery store and we'd been texting, and there was another text between my husband and his brother and me around something else. And so my brother-in-law was in a separate, and I had told my husband that I needed tampons. Could he please buy them at the store? And he texted the one with his brother in it Sam, which tampons did you, but he didn't say my name. He just texted both of us. Which tampons did you need? And I was like, I don't believe I said I needed any, actually. But just the fact that went down, and like, we laughed about it, thankfully, but there was also this expectation that could have been a big, like, awkward bomb, that just missed. But that happened
because like recognizing that even as adults, like,
and we were adults, like this was maybe 10 years ago. This wasn't all that long ago.
But the more comfortable you are, the more work you've done, or maybe like I grew up in a Swedish immigrant home. Mm-hmm. So for me, I talked to my grandmothers, great aunts. I mean, we talked about sexuality and bodies and relationships. There was never a talk. There were just lots and lots of sound bites over my lifetime, right? When you grow up in a home like that, or you create a home like that, right? Then these conversations, they just almost don't even skip a beat.
Right. They're just like, you teach your kids about, you give them the ins and outs about how to apply to college. You give them the ins and outs about how to, like, write a resume, or, get your first job. Like, these are all things that we offer guidance on freely in incremental ways when kids are, and then we start when they're very young.
That's exactly right. And this is the one of the primary places where we give nothing.
Yes.
we make them feel bad about it.
Yeah. We wait for kids
and
to
ask. And then it's like driving. Can you imagine doing this with driving? We say it's a lot of fun. It'll be great, but you're not doing it until later. And then we do nothing else. And we give them keys. And we expect them to be safe.
That's a great analogy.
At a point when this part of the brain isn't really formed so well yet, know? And can you imagine? To me, it's so ludicrous that we do this, because it's such a different experience. My kids, of course, grew up with me. They needed therapy for totally different reasons. But we'd be sitting at the table and I'd be talking about, or they'd bring up whatever. And then they would say, Mom, you just crossed the line. I'm like, darn it. I'm sorry. I went too far. That's how it went in our house,
Like the opposite. Right.
Yeah. And they would be like, they're sex educators for their friends, because they knew what was BS and because we would talk about it interspersed with values and what do you want? And you're writing a narrative that's going to live on in your life. Is it the way you want it to be? I mean, we would be doing all kinds of things. So like with the boys, I was like, I want you to understand your power, because it's different than with women in the United States. Mm-hmm. So when I would see them abuse their power, i.e., how about I give you a lollipop and you clean our room, kind of a thing, when they're 5 and 10, then I'm like, okay, would that feel good if the shoes were on the other feet, right? And my son would be like, no. And I'm like, so here's what I call that. I call that an abuse of power. You've got 5 years, a lot of cognition, tall, and she thinks you walk on water. Mm-hmm. And you just took advantage of that to get something that you wanted. So you're going to have power and influence in your life, but you have to make sure that other people are not exploited, that they get something too, that we live in reciprocity in our family. You have a responsibility. Well, I didn't need to teach that as much to her, but I certainly did to my son, who's white, 6'2", good looking, and knows how to use his power. You know what I mean? Yeah. So again, accountability, right? That's another piece of all of this.
And it's values-based parenting, which again goes back to any parenting topic that you're trying to transmit to your kids, is like couch it in what you believe is true and right.
Right. Exactly. And they should see it in your life, because if they don't, they are allowed to call you out.
Yeah.
Yes. They're going to learn by modeling more than anything.
Definitely will call you out.
They will call you out.
They will. So I think we could probably go on, like Sam mentioned, for hours about this, because it's such an amazing topic. And we will drop all of links, recommendations that Tina has mentioned in the show notes. So please be on the lookout for them. And we can't thank you enough for sharing your wisdom with us and our listeners today. So thank you.
Thanks for having me.
So And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Parenting Shrink Wrap and for raising the next generation of world changers. We love you and we love your kids.
Thanks for joining us on this wild ride called parenthood here at Parenting Shrink Wrapped. We hope today's episode gave you some useful tools and maybe even a few laughs to help you navigate the twists and turns of raising teens and kids.
Remember, parenting is a journey, not a destination. And no matter where you are on the road, we're here to help you stay on course. Whether it's monumental meltdowns, teenage turmoil, or just the everyday chaos, you don't have to travel this path alone.
So until next time, keep your seatbelt fastened, your sense of humor intact, and your eyes on the road. We'll be back soon with more compassionate conversations and practical strategies to support you and your family.
Don't forget to subscribe to Parenting Shrink Wrapped wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. And if you've enjoyed today's show, we'd love it if you'd leave us a review and share it with a friend.
If you have suggestions for topics you'd like to see us cover in the future, feel free to send us an email at parentingshrinkwrapped@gmail.com.
Until we meet again, take care and enjoy the ride.